Ek sê jou, mense, this is not very good for me. Mentally, I can't really cope with this kind of stuff. But I'll react to this video by Zama. Yeah. So let's start.
People think of an anti-apartheid struggle, that terrible history. They always imagine the same thing, the same heroic narrative, the Freedom Charter, Mandela and his sacrifice, the fight against an evil regime. But then there's another story that South African history has largely conveniently buried. While the apartheid government tortured and killed in secret police cells like Vlakpas, the ANC, the organization we celebrate as South Africa's liberators, was running its own concentration camps in exile. And the abuses there were every bit as horrific. This is the story of Mbogoto. The name means the stone that crushes, and it did exactly that for those who planned everything.
Yeah.
For those of you who don't know me, welcome to my channel. My name is
Hello,
Summer
Zama.
Sambit, and for those of you who watch me all the time, welcome back. And I just wanted to say hello in this lovely hot day we have. It's funny. South African weather is funny these days. It's super cold in the morning, and then during the day it just gets really hot. But hey, that's why I'm not wearing a tie today. I said, not this time. The sun was shining on my head. I'm currently sick. I'm a little better than last episode, but hey, let's just get into it. Am I right?
Yeah.
Sick or not, we're gonna tackle everything in this video. And by the way, you know I don't get any sponsors. You know why? Corporate organizations
sad.
like others we know about don't want to sponsor creators like me because they like shoving money up influencers' backside so that they can say what they want them to say. And I'm
Yeah.
sorry, that's not me. I refuse to be compromised. All right? They don't want people like
Yeah.
you and me reading books like these and finding out the truth. They don't want that, right? They don't want us seeing the other side of the apartheid struggle. They don't want that. And because they don't want that, they don't.
And this is why I can really, really respect him. Because he's not a stupid cog that just like follows rules made by stupid people. It's time to actually be brave enough, honest, to actually talk about stuff. Really. But we tend to only listen to the ones in charge, the ones with the loudest voices, and we just blindly follow without without questioning. Yeah.
Sponsor me. So if you'd like to sponsor me in any way, there's a link in the description below where you can buy me a coffee. Thank you so much for your donations. For those of you who already have donated, I see you. Love you all. All right, let's get into it. So let's talk about this other side of South African history I keep talking about. The story of Mbogoto, right? It's a lovely book I read, and if you haven't read it, you should. The Department of National Intelligence and Security, NAT, was established in April 1969 at the ANC's Morogoro conference in Tanzania. Its initial purpose was to prevent infiltration by South African security services, gather intelligence on the apartheid government, and minimize damage from agent penetration. Sounds reasonable, right? Intelligence agencies do need security for obvious reasons. But then what started as a necessary function, it turned into something monstrous in the process. You see, by 1979, NAT had set up Rehabilitation Camp 32, also known as the Morris Sibelo Seabelo Rehabilitation Center in Quatro, Angola. It was used as a detention and torture camp for those who people thought have betrayed the ANC or who were involved in common crime. The word rehabilitation is Orwellian, really. These aren't rehabilitation centers.
No,
These
they're not.
were prisons.
Yeah.
And they were not just prisons, these were nothing but torture chambers. The ANC had torture chambers. The security section of NAT was called the Mbogoto, which gained an infamous
Right there should actually tell you something. ANC has done nothing to help their own people. They have built nothing. They have stolen, lied, corruption. If they have done more harm than good, what makes you think they're going to do something good in the future?
reputation by stamping out any sign of dissent in the ANC death camps and by finding scapegoats, whether real or imagined, when things went wrong. So this whole thing was ran on paranoia, seeing spies everywhere, and everybody suffered for it in there. That's where the real horror escalates. These weren't fact-based. Everyone was just paranoid. The ANC was fighting an armed struggle against apartheid, an armed struggle. Progress was slow. The regime was much stronger than expected. This was prime apartheid. And so instead of questioning tactics or leadership as they should, the Mbogoto came to a terrifying conclusion. There must be spies everywhere. Where spies did not exist, they must be invented. Marijuana smoking was regarded as the work of enemy agents. When the armed struggle made less progress than desired, than what was planned, and the rank and file called for action, an explanation had to be found for why there wasn't that much progress. We put a lot of money to this, so tell us why no one has been killed yet.
And there are so many similarities. They haven't made any progress, ANC. They haven't made people prosper except themselves, okay? But I'm telling you, outside their little circle. Who do we blame? The white man. Don't look at us. It's the white people's fault.
And it was found in the agitation of spies. This paranoia became the justification for mass detention. People weren't being imprisoned because they were actually enemy agents. They were being imprisoned, watch this, because the system needed to explain failure by finding random traitors.
The white people.
And then, of course, came the torture. And when I say torture, I'm talking about methods that would shame Hitler. Let me be direct. The torture methods described in witness accounts include jumping on the heads of suspects to see if they would burst, not my words, theirs, throwing stones at the eyes of suspects standing against the walls, dripping melted plastic on genitalia and open wounds, whipping to death with barbed wire, shambox an electric cable, and burning the soles of feet with red-hot pieces of iron. Listen to that part of the video again. This is not apartheid security forces we're talking about, the ones they talk about all the time. This is the ANC.
Let this sink in. Let this sink in. Like, I mean, as I've mentioned already, I saw photos, I read files from witnesses who saw this, who, were there. And this has stayed with me since the 1980s. This is no joke.
The organization that along the way would become South Africa's ruling party. The comparison is explicit in historical accounts. These tortures surely, oh, come on, Sama, come on. Comparing them to Hitler and Stalin, I'm sure they'd be proud of this. And you're right, they would, because that's how evil this is. That's why I said in the beginning, this stuff would shame Hitler. Because, I mean, come on, even Stalin would smile at this. He'd be like, hey, ANC, hey, aye, man, why didn't I have a meeting with one of these guys? And some people were even murdered for asking questions. The most infamous cases of those men who became victims because they questioned leadership or were simply in the wrong place at the wrong time is absolutely crazy. Tami Zulu, a popular ANC commander known by his nom de guerre as was held by Mbogoto for about 14 months without charge, including 8 weeks in solitary confinement. And then a few days after being released, he died. Forensic evidence indicates he was poisoned. His death caused such an uproar that the ANC was forced to set up a commission of inquiry, sound familiar, which found no evidence that Tami was ever a South African agent in the first place. Sound familiar? ANC starting a commission of inquiry and then finding zero, finding absolute but all. I mean, think about that. He was imprisoned for 14 months, he was tortured and then put to solitary confinement. And then he was poisoned after his release, all for a crime he didn't commit. Tami's deputy, Cyril Raymond, was also detained by the
whatever demon they have inside them. Well, all these fucking evil spirits have, inside them, takes great joy in death, suffering, torture. There will be no prosperity in South Africa. Ever.
Ogoto. If you're wondering why I'm sniffing so much, it's because I'm sick, by the way. But back to the story. He died in their custody, denying he was a police spy. This is Tami's friend. He apparently drowned in his own vomit. There are dozens of similar cases like this. I'm human, I can't tell you all of them. I read them, but I can't be able to get it back to you. I'd have to be some robot with this unfiltered space of memory. I'm just telling you the ones I chose to study and remember so that I could tell to you. Men and women have been detained without trial in these times. They were tortured, they were killed for being suspected of crimes they never even committed in the first place. Like, what on earth was going on? And why were we never taught about this at school? In 1981, the department was formalized with proper training in intelligence, which is training that took place in the Soviet Union, East Germany, Libya, and Zimbabwe. The head of the department was Mzwai Piliso. I hope I said his name correct. Mzwai Piliso. Mzwai, M-Z-W. Mzwai Piliso, with Peter Poroko as his deputy and intelligence head. So, in 1987, Joe Nhlanhla was appointed as the director of the Mbogoto, with Jacob Zuma as his deputy. A senior intelligence official testified that...
And then Zuma gets to lead South Africa. Like, the madness just never stops. The absolute madness never stops. Show me a person with character, integrity, and morals. Show me your past that is open, and then I will make up my own mind.
The powers of the Mbogoto were, let's just say, pervasive, right? They did not consider themselves accountable to the ANC generally or answerable, or answerable to anybody
What
specifically
else is
other than
new?
its head. Let that sink in. The organization that had created a secret police force that answered to no one but its director. Is this a tyranny? It operated outside any accountability
Tyranny,
structure. And then they had the
dictatorship.
power of life and death in their hands. And they followed such barbaric rules. After the Morogoro conference, the South
Okay, sorry. I have to say this. That's why don't come and tell me, oh, the sins of your um four four others I must pay for. I don't know all of their sins. And secondly, nobody is accountable for, I'm telling you, sins of somebody else. We all stand before God by ourselves, giving, I'm telling you, account. Hmm.
African Communist Party, the SACP, exerted increased influence over the ANC's entire organization.
And that's where we are. These guys are communists. They are commies. Learn about what that means. Death of millions. Famine, starvation.
Including the creation of an intelligence and security department which ran along East European lines, which promoted a single ideologically correct line and stifled debate and dissent. Andrew Masondo, the ANC's national commissar and member of the SACP Central Committee, provided the critical nexus between the commissars and Mbogoto. The two worked in harness as the Praetorian Guard of orthodoxy and ideological correctness. Look at this big English. They were busy defending the movement from both ideological subversion and espionage penetration. So basically, removing all the big English, what this means is that the ANC imported Soviet Union-style security methods wholesale. So what Russia was doing back then, the ANC took it and copy-pasted it. The result was predictable. Paranoia, show trials, executions, and a culture where questioning everything could get you to just disappear into thin air. So that's what's happening. So that was what was happening. And then the whitewashing came. So at least 4 official reports have been published since 1992 by the ANC into human rights abuses during its years in exile. At least 3 other organizations have also published reports on the same subject. But here's the thing. These reports exist in obscurity. You see, most South Africans have never even heard of them. Have you? I'm guessing not. The TRC, the Truth and Reconciliation Commission, heard extensively about apartheid atrocities, but gave far less attention to ANC abuses.
That whole thing was the biggest sham out. Most of that was about what the white man was what the white man caused the black man. And there was so much hidden away, rubbed out. It's not important. And they've been up until today. Today, I still wonder and think about the wives and the children that lost husbands at the at some or other mine where Cyril said over the phone, shoot them. And all these men died. I think there were 34 of them. Men, miners, just standing there. And Cyril said, shoot them. But Cyril is hailed as, some unto you fantastic person. No,
The narrative became the ANC was fighting evil. So what happened in the camps was regrettable but necessary, right? It was necessary to do all of those things. It wasn't. And it wasn't an aberration. It was systematic. It was deliberate. Don't let them fool you into thinking like that. And then the reckoning that never came. So what am I talking about? Well, unlike apartheid perpetrators, few Mbogoto operatives actually faced justice. Some were quietly removed from power. Others went on to positions of influence in the post-9.
So, right, let me get this straight. In the camps, they said that they were fighting evil, but they were torturing their own people. So they were calling their own people evil. But now, if you'll notice, they are saying that me, the white person, happens to be evil. How they have twisted that.
1994 government, the organization that tortured and murdered and brutalized its own members, became the government that promised a new South Africa. And as dark as that sounds, it is true. The camps are closed. Quattro is gone. But the story remains. It remains a dark chapter that challenges.
Would be very, very interesting to go and find it. To find these ruins and to go and look.
The heroic narrative that forces all of us to ask, how many liberation movements have hidden their own atrocities?
Yeah.
The answer, when you decide to read the evidence, is uncomfortable. Not everybody is a hero. The ANC's death camps were real as apartheid's, and they deserve the same scrutiny. We're tired of this it's us versus them thing. You must learn both sides of the story as a tax-paying South African who wants to know the truth about everybody, not just one side. The first chapter revealed what Mbogoto was. Okay? Now, I'm going to tell you about what happened when ordinary ANC soldiers finally said enough is enough. You see, by 1984, the ANC's exile camps had become pressure cookers, basically. Thousands of recruits.
And this was around the time when we had so many sanctions against us. And the liberal media was making up so many lies about South Africa. And we had to be home by a certain time at night. You weren't allowed to actually go out at night. I think we had to be at home at, I think, 9 o'clock or something like that.
Young men and women who had fled South Africa to join the armed struggle were stuck in camps across Angola, across Tanzania, and across Zambia. They weren't fighting, they were waiting. And waiting breeds frustration. Frustration breeds questions. And questions are dangerous in a paranoid organization. And because they are dangerous, the pressure started to build, and then you started to see cracks in the system. Between 1967 and 1969 and 1981 and 1984, there were two major episodes of serious repression in the ANC's military camps in exile. Rank and file members of the ANC's armed wing were subjected to harsh discipline, to harsh torture, and in some cases were even killed. By the early 1980s, the situation had become unbearable. Recruits were being detained without charge. People were disappearing just like that. Torture was routine, and the official explanation was always the same. Aye, man, there were spies, there were saboteurs, there were enemies of the revolution. That's why they had to have what happened to them. But the rank and file didn't believe it anymore. That's the problem. Because why? They had seen it too much. They'd watched their friends die under torture.
But funnily enough, Malema's repeating the same word, revolution, revolution. What's he say? The something like you have to kill if there's going to be a evolution or something like that, and the people just lap it up. Yeah, that's a good idea. That's a good idea. Useful cogs.
For crimes they didn't even commit. Did they commit these crimes? We don't know. They'd listen to confessions that made no sense. People confessing to being CIA agents or South African police informants when everyone knew it wasn't true. So someone was lying. Someone was lying. The Cape commanders and security officials, the people running Mbogoto, had created an atmosphere of such pervasive fear and paranoia that it eventually became unsustainable. You can only torture so many innocent people before the system collapses under its own contradictions. Right? Or tell me if I'm wrong. Tell me if you disagree with me right now in the comment section.
You are right.
And then in 1984, something very unprecedented happened. The soldiers mutinied. What am I talking about? Well, it's not some small pocket protest or a few complaints or some small revolt. This was organized, coordinated resistance from within the camps themselves. You had young ANC recruits, the very people the organization depended on to fight apartheid, who refused to accept this oppressive system anymore. The mutiny was significant because it exposed the reality that Mbogoto's entire justification.
I want to ask, I just want to ask a question. Who is now being, be, who is now being, what's the word? Oppressed. It's everybody. Everybody is now going through that. It's crazy. Sometimes I wish I could just take people and just shake them awake to get the brain going. We are all in the same boat here. And I'm telling you, it is sinking.
was built on lies. If all these detained soldiers were really these big spies, as they wanted me and you to believe, as the security apparatus claimed, then how on earth could there be such widespread dissatisfaction? How on earth could so many soldiers simultaneously reject the system then? The answer was obvious to anyone in the camps. They weren't spies. These were just soldiers asking questions. They were asking why their comrades were being tortured and killed, and then they ended up being tortured and killed.
And that's the other thing. Don't ask questions. You aren't allowed to ask questions. Don't think. Don't ask questions.
That was their response, crackdown and executions. Wow. The ANC's leadership's response to the mutiny was brutal and immediate, because this wasn't time for dialogue and reflection or for them to think about what they did. This was time for making examples. Oh, you guys are protesting. Let's make an example of you. Due to human rights abuses in the ANC's camps by the security section of NAT in a mutiny in 1984, it was decided that at the May 1985 Kabwe conference to suspend NAT with its functions run by temporary committee. But suspension came after the damage. You see, the mutineers faced military tribunals. Some were sentenced to death by public execution, shot in front of other soldiers as a warning. Watch this, boom, boom, boom. That's going to happen to you if you do this. Others were re-detained, further tortured, or just disappeared entirely. Till this day, we don't know what happened to them. The irony was sickening. The ANC, fighting against apartheid's injustice, was now holding show trials and executing its own soldiers. The very method.
Were they actually ever really fighting, all right, against so-called apartheid? From this, it doesn't sound like it. They were just fighting amongst themselves. Nothing is new. Nothing has changed.
The apartheid regime used: summary justice, public executions, elimination of dissent, were being imported into the ANC's own camps. That's crazy. That's when the paranoia reached peak absurdity. Because I'm going to tell you a part where the story becomes even darker. As the mutiny spread, Mboboto's response wasn't to investigate whether their detention policies were justified. It was to assume that the mutiny itself was proof of infiltration. In other words, if soldiers are rebelling against our torture system, that's evidence that enemy agents have infiltrated our ranks and are sowing discord. This is Soviet-style paranoia at its most delusional. The system creates the conditions for rebellion. When rebellion happens, the system interprets it as this proof that the system was right all along. We were right all along. There were spies everywhere. What? Are you crazy? Senior officials of the ANC confirmed in testimony to the Square Commission that they knew of the torture in those camps in Angola. They knew. The leadership knew what was happening, and they allowed it to continue. They allowed everything to continue. And then at the May 1985 Kabwe conference, it was decided to suspend NAT with its functions run by a temporary committee. But here's the thing about suspending an organization. It doesn't erase what it did. It doesn't unkill everyone else. It doesn't hold anyone accountable. It just shuffles the deck. The soldiers who had been tortured remained traumatized. The families of those who were killed remained grieving. The people who had ordered the torture and executions remained in the ANC hierarchy, often promoted or laterally moved rather than punished, which is crazy because what this tells me is that after all those people have died, we don't know the number. We don't know the number. It was a lot. Nobody went to jail. Classic ANC, right? After 1985, various ANC commissions investigated what had happened in those camps. The Chobondwana Commission, the Skweyiya Commission, reports were written, findings were made. Where do you think I got all this information? It's public, but these official reports have been published and public since 1992, yet they exist in relative obscurity. The question remains whether the ANC's security apparatus excesses were a regrettable byproduct of the armed struggle, or whether they actually reveal something more fundamental about how the organization operated. The leadership's position became, yes, bad things happened, guys, but come on, it was war. It was wartime. This was necessary. This was the cost of us saving you. We saved you.
This is the typical answer. We'll just break a few. I'm trying to think how it goes. Oh, okay. We'll just break a few tomatoes, eggs. It's okay. It's not a problem because we are trying to reach our goal. It doesn't matter who does. It's fine. Death means nothing to these people. They are communists. It's exhausting, this.
And that's a convenient argument. It absolves everyone.
Yeah.
It suggests that torture and execution is acceptable if you're fighting the right enemy. But is that really the right way to do things? Who gave these orders? Who authorized the torture? Who signed off on these executions? I'll tell you, but you'll have to wait for part 2.
Yeah. All right, so Zama's just said there's a part 2 of this. And yeah. So I hope the people who are watching this have learned something. I basically knew this, but I didn't know to what extent. Funny enough, the people that were able to actually get out of the camps ran for help to the Afrikaners. Yeah, that's who they ran to. Medical care, and I know that there'll be some people that think I'm lying and making up stories, but I am so over this. I am telling you what I saw and know. Yeah, so there's a part 2 of this. I might do it tomorrow. I might not. Because this just absolutely wears me out. I cannot handle things about torture or cruelty or things like that very well. So, that was History 101. Thanks. Bye.